Hello and welcome to Heartbeat Alaska Native News and Native Information. I'm Jeannie Green. Thank you so very much for joining us. Thank you, everyone. I receive your phone calls and I love to hear from you by email as well. I love those calls and I love hearing from Canada and all over America. It's great to do a show for you. On today's program, a very special exclusive interview with Dr. David Sampson. Who is he? He's a very important person that I hope you will get to know better on today's show. He is the U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Economic Development, and he answers to President Bush. His job is to improve the economy in depressed parts of America. And on today's program, we'll see his impression of Alaska. I'll be back with Dr. David Sampson right after this.
Hi, my name is Sharon Raitan, and I live in Galena, and I want to say hi to my family in Barrow. Hi, everyone. Heartbeat Alaska will be back.
Heartbeat Alaska is brought to you in part by Coastal Villages Region Fund. Thank you, CVRF, for your support of Heartbeat Alaska. And
by the Nature Conservancy of Alaska, working with Alaska's rural communities to conserve and protect our natural heritage.
Hi, I'm Mark from Scan Home, and we're proud to sponsor Heartbeat Alaska.
Scan Home, serving all of Alaska's home and office furnishing needs. Thank you, Scan Home, for making Heartbeat Alaska possible.
Heartbeat Alaska is brought to you in part by Brown's Electric Lighting Gallery. Thank you, Brown's Electric, for your generous support of Heartbeat Alaska.
Let's visit now with Dr. David Sampson. He is the U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Economic Development. He answers to President Bush. He took a trip recently to some villages in Alaska to see if our standards of poverty were the same as the lower 48. Space, wide open sky, and the rest of the world seems so far away. Traditional living, hunting, and fishing. There are communities here that are older than America, older than its Constitution, older than its government. Now, these communities find themselves competing in a global marketplace. And now that same government is trying to help community leaders change the economy of rural Alaska. It's a job as big and as unique as the state itself. Flying around rural Alaska
It's easy to find the mistakes of the past.
Well, the barrels were brought here back in the 50s when the Air Force came in. They brought a year's supply of fuel, or at least a year's supply of fuel, to build the roads and build a site. So they brought in thousands of barrels.
Government officials often find themselves making decisions about rural Alaska from thousands of miles away. Regulations made to fit the rest of the country often don't fit into village life.
That's one of the reasons why a lot of the high school kids nowadays, after they graduate, they move off island, because there's nothing here for them. It's sad to say.
To say Alaska's economy is unique is a gross understatement. Unlike most states, it's an economy based on the abundance of the land and sea. Oil, tourism, and fishing are the biggest moneymakers in the state.
Going to get the price on this here.
And it only takes a visit to any grocery store in rural Alaska to understand how the high cost of shipping affects the economy. A gallon of milk at the Honduras store in Galena currently costs about $8, while in Chicago it costs $3. Those additional costs not only make your breakfast more expensive, they also make it harder for companies to compete in the global economy.
Then I went to seminary and received advanced degrees in theology and was an ordained minister for many years, worked within a local church setting. And then in the early 90s, I kind of came back into the area of public policy.
This is Dr. David Sampson. He's the U.S. Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Economic Development under President Bush. Simply put, his job is to develop the economy across America. He recently visited 3 villages in rural Alaska to learn firsthand how living and working in our part of the country is just a little different than anywhere else.
He is stepping forward and saying the Economic Development Agency is accountable. We need to get federal government working together and focus on these challenges. Now, we can't do it alone. The communities and states and regions have to do their part.
The first thing I'm here to do is to listen and learn about the challenges that they have, to find out the kinds of things that the federal government is doing that put barriers in the way of growth so that we can go back and work on reducing those barriers and eliminating many of those barriers. And so we do care.
The Economic Development Administration, or EDA, was created in 1965 to help create jobs in depressed parts of America. The idea is for the government to use its leverage to encourage private enterprise and local people to create business that creates jobs, and jobs bring communities out of economic distress.
The President believes very strongly that no geographic area or demographic sector of America should be left behind when it comes to having the chance to participate more fully in the American dream and economic opportunity.
The American dream in the villages is defined in a different way, and looking around the vastness that surrounds many villages, it's hard to find economic opportunity.
As you can see, when you look around here, there's not much of a cash flow or economic base. There's no Walmart here. There isn't any kind of businesses, so the cash economy is very low. What most of our villages have had to do is basically survive on 2 different economies, one is of course the cash economy, and the major portion of it is the subsistence.
Henry Rexford works with the youth of the Bering Straits region.
This isn't the first time I've been here.
He knows firsthand the problems these youth will face as they grow into community leaders.
This is where the youth councils come in. At least they can voice their concerns and hopefully try to partner with the rest of the community. It's going to take a lot of community partnership to make this work, but basically give that voice to the leaders of these communities and to see how we can start actually developing more jobs, what might be in entrepreneuring, It might be actually taking some of the things that they have that are very natural, like the resources. Of course, we've got our native dancing. We've got a lot of our arts and crafts. Now, all we have to do is to start trying to develop some ways of actually getting it to the market. We have to start thinking about, well, what other kind of opportunities, job opportunities can we create at the local level? We're not going to be developing jobs and fixing airports forever. We have to go beyond.
We're not interested any longer in just processing grants and getting money out the door. What we're interested in is results and making sure that federal economic development grants actually increase job opportunities for the citizens around the country.
Yes, I'm a fisherman. I've been a fisherman all my life. Been fishing since I was 8 years old. Now I'm 42. It looks like my fishing career is about to be ended.
This is Leonard Holmberg Sr. He knows all too well the need to shore up the economy of rural Alaska. With the fishing industry faltering all over the state, there are more than just jobs at stake. There are families.
They can't rely on fishing anymore. They've got to get a different job, have other opportunities to go to. Like me and my dad, we depended on this all our life. Now there's no more.
There are many reasons for the very low fish prices across the state, but whatever the reason, the effects will be felt in communities like Sandpoint.
Really don't know what's going to happen in communities that way because they really rely on fish tax. That's what runs the city. All the fish tax. Don't know what's going to happen.
With whole communities on the brink of collapsing, just like salmon prices, Dr. Sampson really has some challenges before him. When Heartbeat Alaska returns, we'll look at those challenges and 2 villages that are facing up to them.
Hello, I'm Sidney Huntington from Unalakleet, and Heartbeat Alaska will be right back.
Are you traveling to Anchorage for education or health care? The Alaska Family Hospice is your home in the city. Located 1.5 blocks from the Alaska Native Medical Center, Alaska Family Hospice offers fully equipped apartments, housekeeping services, shuttle service, Medicaid payments, grocery shopping service, or cook your own native food right in your apartment.
Well, I've been coming here for the last 3 years, and all the times I come here, it's like a home away from home.
For total comfort, affordability, and safety, come on home to the Alaska Family Hospice, your home in the city. For everything you'll need to build your dream home, Northern Building Supplies has got you covered. Northern Building Supplies even manufactures their own Arctic homes, especially built to handle Alaska's toughest climates. Native-owned and operated, Northern Building Supplies specializes in rural Alaska and will get your freight to your village at the most economical rate. So for your next home and all of your building materials, visit Northern Building Supplies, serving the state of Alaska since 1993. The new clinic building in Unalakleet is really starting to take shape. Unalakleet is one of the villages that Dr. Sampson was able to visit on his tour of Alaska.
I was there to view the sub-regional primary care clinic that the Denali Commission is helping to fund. I saw the pride that the community takes in the development of that facility that's going to serve a number of villages in that region. But perhaps even more important was the construction crew made up of residents of that village that are building a very sophisticated building and learning skills that they are going to be able to use in other construction projects in the area. And so I think that that's the kind of example where we can build, work with the Denali Commission on building the kinds of facilities that are not only going to serve an immediate human need, but will also be an economic generator. And that regional facility is going to increase the demand for medical personnel. And we need to be looking for strategies to make sure that Alaskans are filling Alaska jobs.
One way that is happening is through collaboration.
It's that word collaboration. It's so interesting. If you write it down, in the middle of it, there's another word, and it's called labor. And what that means is work together. In fact, we don't build things unless we're invited into the community. They have a plan of how they want the community to progress, that they agree to. And we're just there to help the community help themselves.
One community that knows how to help itself is Galena. Galena is home to one of the longest runways in the bush. It was built by the Air Force during World War II. Both the runway and Air Force Base attached to it were put into warm storage in 1993. Galena is also one of the villages Dr. Sampson visited.
I don't know how anyone could visit, let's say, Galena, for example, and see the way the community there has worked with the Air Force to reuse that base and many of the facilities on that base, the expansion of the healthcare facility there, the dormitories, the school, the residential school for high school students around Alaska, the training center expansion that EDA is funding there in Galena. I don't know how you could visit that and not be optimistic about the future. I think that they are providing the kind of model that can be and should be replicated around the state. They have a very cohesive group of leaders among the various organizations of the village corporation, the tribal organization.
The kind of planning Dr. Sampson is talking about isn't complicated. As a matter of fact, it has a lot to do with breakfast.
Right here in Galena, I'll say one thing for these people, that every month, sometimes twice a month, they go up here to one of these restaurants, from 30, 40 of them get there, have breakfast, have a breakfast meeting, and planning what we should be doing down the road 3, 4, 5, and 10 years from now. I've heard some good plans of what's going to happen there in the next few years, maybe. We have to plan ahead, be prepared for whatever, if any dollars ever comes up again.
Sidney Huntington in Galena is a man who has a fascinating life story. And it was kind of like meeting a legend to be able to visit with him. I think that he really exemplifies this perspective that Alaskans want to be self-sufficient. They don't want to just live with the transfer payments from federal and state agencies. And I think he's a very articulate spokesman for an economic development strategy that will bring new sources of income into communities. And it was a fascinating experience getting to meet him.
Dr. Sampson has a simple philosophy of economic development. It has to do with what he calls the 3 L's.
What we've talked about in the villages is that our mission at the Department of Commerce and EDA is, first of all, to link communities together in a comprehensive economic development strategy and link them with the appropriate resources at the state and federal level. Secondly, the second L is leverage. Our goal is to leverage the private sector investment. Ultimately, government can't create wealth. Government can only create the conditions in which the private sector will invest money and create jobs. And so what we want to do is to try to leverage maximum private sector investment. And then third, learn. I think there are some very forward-looking, progressive communities that are around Alaska that we had the opportunity to visit. They've identified a strategy, they've proven a concept, and what we need to be able to do is to help other communities learn from them and then replicate those strategies.
It would be almost impossible to visit rural Alaska and not leave with lasting impressions. And Dr. Sampson will take what he's learned back to Washington.
I think of the faces of the children that I met in Kotlik, the beautiful little girls that were there. Veronica, I remember Veronica very clearly, and you know, the bright face and the smile that greeted us there. I want to stay focused on creating opportunity for her. I assure you, I will not forget walking through those, walking on the boardwalk in Kotlik as we make economic policy decisions back in Washington. Those folks will be very much on the front of my mind.
I will not allow the legislature to use any of your permanent fund earnings without a vote of the people.
That's why I'm supporting Fran Ulmer. She believes those dollars should remain in your pockets. I certainly agree, and if you do, you'll join me in voting for Fran Ulmer.
The people of Alaska created the permanent fund. As your governor, I will protect the fund and its earnings with a vote of the people. That's my promise.
Each week, Heartbeat Alaska brings you great stories from all over the state. And we couldn't do it without the generous support of Frontier Flying Service. Frontier gets our camera crews where they need to go. So whenever you see a Frontier plane, give them a wave. Say hi from Norfolk. You might just be on Heartbeat Alaska.
Frontier Flying Service, covering Alaska for over 50 years.
While we're on the subject of the economy in Alaska, let's travel out to the Pribilof Islands to St. George. The economy there is not so good, but at least their clinic has some new improvements.
It's an island of rugged beauty, an island of mist, a home to countless birds from all over the world. Hundreds of miles out in the Bering Sea, St. George Island is one of the most remote places on the planet. But for about 150 people, it is the only place they'll call home. Healthcare in such a remote place is not easy. What would be a minor problem in a big city can become an emergency out here.
Well, right here is one of our exam rooms, exam room 1.
Georgia Kashevarof works hard to keep the small clinic on St. George up to date and staffed. But it's not easy to recruit qualified people from so far away.
We have been seeking the past 2 years for a full-time PA, physician assistant, and we're still trying to secure, if not a physician assistant, nurse practitioner, RN, registered nurse to cover our clinic, and it's been pretty hard.
St. George is an old village full of quaint old buildings, but there's nothing quaint about outdated and run-down medical equipment.
As you see, this is an old x-ray machine, and it has a tendency to short out.
The St. George Traditional Council raised $470,000 for new equipment in their clinic, but they needed a little more. With such a clear need, public support in the community, and a traditional council ready to support the clinic, the Denali Commission saw a great opportunity to help. Through a program called Fast Track, the commission was able to get $57,000 to the clinic in a very short time.
We're getting a new oxygen filtration system, because we have to send out our oxygen bottles, and that costs a lot of money.
Fast Track allows projects with a good plan and strong community involvement get their funding in a matter of months rather than years.
We'll be also getting a new stretcher with an IV pole attached to it.
It was a little help at just the right time for an island that is working hard to make their corner of the world a little brighter.
The Denali Commission, Alaskans working together to build a better Alaska.
Thank you so much, Jeff Staser from the Denali Commission and others involved with those other stories about the Denali Commission and their work around Alaska. And thank you, Dr. Sampson. It was a pleasure meeting you, and it's a pleasure bringing Heartbeat Alaska to you. And I want to thank you once again for joining us. Join me again next week for more news that touches the lives of our Native people. I'm Jeannie Green. God bless you. We'll see you then.